Betty Absher.
Our Father, as we come before you, we come with thankfulness in our hearts that you are always mindful of us. And yet, God, we realize that there are many in our community and in this world that are less fortunate than we. We realize the responsibility, God, of the decisions that we make in our meetings, and we just pray that as we go into this meeting tonight, that the decisions that we make will be for the good of those that we serve and will be pleasing to you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Roll call, Ms. Kirby.
Councilwoman Pearson.
Here.
Councilman Matthews.
Here.
Councilman Branham. Councilwoman Abshir.
Here.
Councilman Smith.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem McVeigh.
Here.
And Mayor DeGaris.
Here.
We have 6 present.
Thank you. Disclosure of interest. Any member of the City Council may disclose any possible conflict of interest dealing with either any item on the printed agenda or with any matter discussed at a previous meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I need to make note of item CC under, first item 8, then CC resolution, that I'm related to one of the board members, so I will not be voting.
Thank you. If none other have citizens' input, each person in the audience may take this opportunity to address the City Council on any matter which is not on the printed agenda. Moving on, there's nothing on the consent agenda, so we'll go to the workshop items. City Council review a proposed ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement for the Industrial Park Drainage Project grant proceeds.
And I think most of you are aware that we applied for and hit on a grant for the industrial park, and it's for drainage improvements down there. The drainage around the industrial park, I think most of you all know, is very critical, but this will help during a normal rain. It will allow water to flow more freely, and what flow there is in the south end. The total grant is $332,000. Of that amount, $66,000, a little over $66,000, is in-kind services that will be provided by our street department. It's going to be some improvements. I would like to tell you major improvements, but when we see heavy rain in that area and the ditches are full and the rivers are full and the drainage areas are full, we're still going to have backup in that area, but this will help in a marginal rain more so than it does now.
Mr. Bagby, you know it's the county. I know the mayor and I, a couple of years ago, spent about a half day out in the county looking at those ditches below the industrial park.
Right.
I don't know if they've made any progress or not. If they don't, it's almost like a dam in some of those ditches with the trees and the brush that's grown up in them. And that'd be a big help if we could convince them to do that.
And Jeremy Grable has, with his street department crews, has went out along the railroad ditch there and removed a lot of debris even towards the county. And then I'm not sure what kind of progress the county has made on opening that on up through there, but we've already made significant improvements down there, and this is just an area where we found some funds available to do some additional projects.
Yeah, I remember we told the group of citizens from the county that came in that they were really meeting with the wrong group.
Yeah.
I mean, we certainly listened to them and understand their problem, but until those ditches get cleaned out, we can clean them out up on our end and get the water flowing, but when it hits some of those ditches that Ed and I looked at, it stops right there and begins to back up again. So hopefully we can work with them on that, and they will, it'll help solve the problem a little bit anyway.
Mr. Bagby, I'm very thankful that you all are looking into this, and for the people in the south end of Poplar Bluff, it is, you guys got my email, I'm sure, today with all the photos. It's just a tremendous issue, and I'm so thankful that we're starting to look at that.
Now we are constantly on the lookout. Unfortunately, there's there's very limited dollars when you look, and there's people with a lot of needs. The minor flooding that we had this past weekend was major flooding in certain areas of southeast Missouri, and they look at those limited dollars in a manner of who needs it the most. And I guess if we completely let our, and I'm not kidding, but I'm being somewhat, see, if we completely let our drainage systems go, we would have a better chance of getting grants than we do with the street department keeping up with the stuff that they do down there. So, but we're constantly looking at avenues. I know you sent a couple of links today. One of them with DED was tied to industrial development, and you have to have so many jobs, and it was strictly a loan program. The CDBG is where grants that hit us more often than not. And we're also currently evaluating a program that with eCivis that will allow us to filter grants. I mean, you can Google a grant right now and it'll give you 700 grants, none of which you will hit on. This program actually filters and focuses what you need, and also gives you a probability of what your chances are based on your infrastructure and the needs you have of hitting on those grants. So it saves a lot of time and energy, and whether we're going to be able to afford it or not is yet to be seen. But we're reviewing it again next week with both the police department, Mark Massingham, myself, Dennis, and Penny McGath. And it may be a way to filter these down to stuff that you actually have a chance of hitting on, as opposed to just searching for a grant and going out and hitting and finding out you've wasted a lot of time before you get there.
You know, one of the discouraging things, Angela, that I've seen since I've been on the council is that we get flood buyout grants, and some people refuse to take them. They think they're not going to get enough money or whatever. We don't have any control over what's paid, but they don't take the grant, and then it floods again, and they get upset with us again. You know, I don't know what else we can do when we get the grant, flood buyout. I know Mr. Thompson's working on one now, I believe. I saw something about a grant for flood buyout or something, and I know we constantly look for those, and then when you get them and some folks don't want to take them, it's
Well, I think we're on
that's just all part of it.
we're starting out good with this grant,
Yeah.
possibly.
Yeah. I think last year last year that main ditch got cleaned out, and I think that helped a lot of draining the water out the south end. They took, what, about 5 foot out in some places, Jeremy? Took it out quite a bit, so. If there's no other discussion, I'd entertain a motion and a second to move this to the voting session to be held tonight.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, City Council will discuss a recommendation from the Municipal Utilities Advisory Board regarding an electric rate study performed by Baker Tilly Virtual Cross LLC.
This is Mr. Tom Unke from Baker and Tilly, and they have done work for us in the past, but we primarily got acquainted with them through American Public Power Association. He's going to tell you a little bit about his company, so I'm not going to do that. But they represent a lot of utilities in North America and probably other places too.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, and public. I am Tom Unke. I'm the partner in charge of this engagement for Baker Tilly. We were engaged by the city of Poplar, Bluff, and the utilities to perform an electric rate study for the utility. And I'm here tonight to present that information to you all and to answer your questions and respond to any questions you have relative to the work that we did, and also to summarize the results for you. While I have information I'd like to share, it's in presentation form. You should have received 2 packets. One is the actual rate study itself, probably has a transmittal in the front, and the second one is a copy of a presentation, a blue and white cover titled Electric Revenue Requirement Cost of Service Study. I'm going to be talking off of that document, and you can feel free to follow along in the pages, or if you'd like to, just listen along and ask questions as I proceed through here. The utility felt, and the advisory board that I met with earlier tonight thought it would be beneficial for me to spend a little bit of time with the council to not only share the results of the work that we did, but also to kind of explain to you the whole process that's followed to conduct the analysis in order to help provide the community and to you as the council members assurances on the approach and and I guess homework than efforts that were put into the project itself. I'm just going to, I know you have a full agenda, I'm just going to jump right into this. And you can wait to the end if you have questions, or just feel free to give me the look, and that look will signify I should be quiet for a second while you can ask me a question. So I appreciate the time you've provided me tonight. I'm moving on to the first page. We don't really need to spend any time talking about our company. I think we just need to let you know that we're a large accounting and advisory firm. I'm a CPA actually by trade. We work with a lot of public utilities, not only here in the Central South, but also the Midwest and on the coast as well. And I guess the work that we conduct here is consistent with the same services we provide to utilities across the nation relative to the rate support services that we provide to utilities. Turning on to page 3, I'd like to start a little high level and then get a little granular as I proceed through here tonight. First, I'd like to just discuss to you what a rate study actually is. And a rate study is predominantly trying to provide answers to a couple questions. First is, do the rates provide enough revenue to meet the utility costs? And secondly, do each customer class pay their apportionate or fair share of those utility costs? You have multiple different rate classes within the electric utility, for example, residential, commercial, power sales, commercial demand, things like this. So we want to make sure that the different classes of customers are paying an equitable share relative to the costs that they cause within the utility. We compare those costs to the revenue that's generated in a particular single year, which is usually a forecasted year. In this case, we use 2013 as our forecasted year. So if we project your expenses and take a look at your revenue, we can determine whether the expenses and revenues fall short or are adequate to cover your cost of service. That is what a rate study is. Now, why is Poplar Bluff reviewing their electric rates? I believe it's because over the past couple of years, the utility has recognized negative net income. In addition to recognizing negative net income, you've also received a declining use of cash, so you've generated negative cash flow. So I believe it's I guess I'm speaking editorially here, I believe this is why we were engaged. But it was time that you take a look at electric rates and determine whether current base rates are adequate enough. The last time that we worked with your utility was we did a rate study for you back in, I believe, 2006 or 2007. So I'm happy to be back. It's been 6 years. I was told tonight that I look the same other than my hair's gray now. So it's funny how things change in 6 years. Let's just moving on to page 5, high-level project overview with the rate study. The first step we did is we forecast what we call the revenue requirement, and the definition of that is pretty straightforward. How much revenue is required to be collected from user rates? And we do that by projecting your operating expenses and comparing that to your revenue, and the difference is the revenue requirement. Secondly, we analyze the cost of service. And what I mean by that is it's literally in simple terms of splitting the pie. If we have $10 million of revenue requirement, we try to apportion the $10 million to the different customer classes and then compare that to the revenue being generated by each customer class to determine the differences in rate adjustments that might be needed from different class to class. So when I say rate class, again, I mean residential class, commercial class, power sales class, street lighting, or area lighting, I should say. So that is the second phase. And thirdly, then we design and propose electric rates based on that cost of service, as well as many factors. You might have rate design objectives, social objectives, cost of service objectives. We work together with your utility to develop a proposed rate structure that ensures collection of the revenue requirement. Okay. That is the project that we are engaged to complete on behalf of the utility. So let's move on to page 7, which is, I want to talk to you a little bit about the details of the first chapter of this book, essentially, which is the revenue requirement. The revenue requirement answers the questions of what expenses do we need to recover, and how much revenue do we need to cover these expenses. Okay. A good way to really identify that is if you turn to page 8. Page 8 is the summary of what your revenue requirement is. The revenue requirement adds up your total operation and maintenance expenses, We also then add in two other items, which is depreciation and return, which I'll talk about in just a little bit. When I use the word return in the utility, sometimes that is misinterpreted, meaning the utility is trying to earn a profit or a margin, and that's far from the case. Return is generally used to finance capital or other spending that does not hit your income statement budget. So if you pay down debt, as an example, on a utility, it doesn't hit your operation and maintenance expenses. It just pays down a liability. So we need to generate a margin, if you will, to pay for those off income statement expenditures. So if you add up O&M, depreciation, and return, that equals your gross revenue requirement. Now you also have other revenue offsets. You have capacity credits, you get pole attachment and other rental revenue. You have available capacity where you sell energy into the market, and as that generates additional income, that's offsetting your native load, your existing load within the community, and those other revenues are offset against the revenue requirement. One component on page 8 that you might not see in here is other utilities would have another component of rates, revenue requirement, which is a payment in lieu of taxes. Many utilities charge a payment in lieu of taxes. Since a utility is exempt from paying property and local taxes, communities will charge a tax to the utility. Your utility and community don't really do that. Instead, what you do is the utility finances and pays for all the services provided to the city. For street lights, as an example, street lighting expense. Usually in those communities who have a payment in lieu of taxes, they also get a bill for street lighting. So in the case of Poplar Bluff, you say, let's not play the games of pushing money back and forth. Just the benefit of this community is for you to pay for all of these services that the city uses. So that's why there's no tax equivalent in here, because we pay for those. The utility pays for those services. Okay, just moving on to page 9, I have talked to you about the O&M expenses is really relative to our operation and maintenance expenses, and I've talked to you about depreciation as well already. Let's turn to page 10. Remember I said just a few minutes ago, depreciation and this margin or return are used to pay for costs. And the depreciation and return components in your rate study are really used to pay for debt service and also to to generate earnings to finance utility construction costs that aren't bonded. Okay? Most utilities have utility spending pay for capital additions on an ongoing basis, but when there's large capital projects or new capital projects of significant spending, then you borrow funds for those. So depreciation and return equal that. Now, return is, by the way, expressed in a percentage, if you will. And I just wanted to show you the analytical approach used when doing your rate analysis. An investor-owned utility. So if you have local investor-owned utilities or electrical cooperatives, for example, who follow a regulated rate return, they earn around a 12% return generally on what's called their rate base. Okay, we don't probably need to talk about the details of that, but the return component that you have implemented into this rate study, you earn around a 4.4% return. So, so it's very negligible relative to an investor-owned utility. And you might ask yourself, well, how does that 4.4% compare to other utilities, public utilities? And generally, public utilities earn at least a 6.5%, 6%, sometimes up to an 8% return. So if you were asking, well, how are our rates adequate and how is this return playing into your rate adjustment, I would say that the return component included in your rate design is probably as low as I would ever recommend it being right now. Okay. The thought would be, could you make it lower? Sure, you can make return to 0 if you would like, but that means you will generate no cash flow to make capital improvements. So that's the catch-22, right? If you want to hold rates down, let's say we don't want to earn a margin, well then you won't have any cash flow to actually pay for capital improvements. So I'm bringing this to your attention because a 4.4% return, the way we've calculated it in this model, is well within the reasonableness of rate recovery for municipal utilities. And if anything, it's a little bit on the low end, to be honest, compared to others. Okay. So let's move to page 12. That's a couple more pages. with that explanation in mind, this is the summary of our revenue requirement part of our study. You currently generate around $31.2 million of revenue from electric ratepayers today. Your operating expenses are actually $32.2 million. Now, $32.2 million, that sounds like a big number. $28 million or $29 million of that is power costs. So that is just you purchasing power, taking the power, and reselling the power to your residents. So it's a pass-through of costs of that $32 million. The other $3 million represents maintenance of your distribution system, like tree trimming, employees to maintain your system. It also includes around $1.3 million of customer accounting costs, billing, collections, having a customer service center, paying insurance, retirement for your employees. That's what that number is. So if someone would say to you, boy, that 32 million is a very high number, we got to get that cost down. Well, 28 or so million, or almost 29 million is power sales. So the only way to get that down is to have your community spend less time using electricity, because it's a variable cost. Then we have the depreciation and return of 2.1 and 1.7, and that's an important number to look at. Those two numbers together are around $3.8 million. And if you take a look at your actual cash flow requirements, you pay debt service of around $1 million, and you pay for capital additions on an annual basis for around $2.5 million. So those two numbers kind of add up to those two. Then you have other revenues, which is an offset. Your utility does generate revenue with pole attachment revenue, capacity credits. You sell revenue into the marketplace for generation assets that you have when you don't need the power, but you can sell the power and make a little margin on the sales. That's an offset. So the difference of all of that means you are short around $2 million of earnings today. Okay, this is based on a forecast 2013 year. So if you're asking to me today, Tom, where are we going to be at the end of 2013 if we do not do anything? I believe that you'll be short $2 million of cash flow coming into this year. Okay. Now, page 13 is actually a summary of that cash flow. Revenue at present rates, actually I say it's 1.6 million or so in here. And with their increase in rates that we're proposing of $2 million will generate a positive cash flow of around $380,000. Now, you might ask the question, well, what do we need the other $380,000 for? That $380,000 is trying to develop stability in your rates from year to year by using that depreciation number. So the $380,000, by the way, is less. It's only really a percent of your total revenue. So it's immaterial. It's probably within rounding errors of some of the forecast estimates that we've made of actual operating costs this year. So that really provides a negligible margin, if anything, relative to what we're proposing for this rate increase. So you'll see that we have negative cash flow, but with the rate increase proposed, by the way, on an annual basis, right? It's already May. So I think even if you implemented new rates today, through the rest of the year, you will still be negative cash flow at the end of this year because we'll only get a half-year impact on the rate adjustment. So moving on to page 14, slide 14, what are the takeaway points from our forecast? Yes, we agree current rates do not cover your expenses, and the proposed rates will provide you coverage of your cash flow requirements. Let's move on to page 16 now. Now, if you will, we are in chapter 2, if you will, of the rate study 101. We forecasted our rates. Now we have to go through a process of apportioning those dollars to the rate classes. And the cost of service study assigns those expenses to customer classes, and they try to develop and match the cost of the benefits received in each rate class. Okay, so I make very simple examples to explain how a cost of service works. If you are paying and passing through power costs relative to energy, well, if customer A's electric meter spins, they create a need for electricity while another customer doesn't, correct? So if you're apportioning those energy costs, they should go to the individual whose meter was spinning, creating the need for the energy. That's what a cost of service study does. We try to apportion those dollars to the appropriate rate class. Unfortunately, everything is not as easy as allocating energy costs. When we get into allocating pensions and benefits, for example, how do you allocate those? Well, they relate to their labor costs. Well, how do the labor get costs? Oh, the labor gets charged to customer accounting, distribution expenses, and administrative and general, and then those are the processes in which you'd allocate the costs. So it's I would say it's a significant effort to split the pie, if you will, of the 33 million or so revenue requirement, and that's what a cost of service study does. Okay. Let me see. So let's move to page 19, if you will, in this analysis. Now you'll see here the forecasted revenue at current rates, if everyone is able to get to that page. It's the second column, where I believe with no rate adjustment, your revenue at current rates are $31,206,000. Well, the cost of service, the revenue requirement, really was summarizing that we need $33,218,000. That's the total in the first column. Does everyone see that? Lower left? Okay. What the cost of service study does is it allocates their $33,000 between your customer classes of residential, commercial heat, power sales, mercury vapor, charged off sales, and water department. And you'll see here that the difference is the $2 million that we believe rates need to be adjusted. What does $2 million mean? It means a 6.45% adjustment to electric rates. And you'll see on the right, percent change required. From a cost of service standpoint, again, the mathematical formula to try to apportion costs. The 6.45 varies from class to class, ranging from 8% to 2.5%, all the way to a small decrease. Okay, so that's really what the cost of service shows. It's actually consistent to a little consistent to what we did back in 2006, but 2006, it's been so long since you had a rate adjustment, and the rate adjustment was a large one in 06, that you felt, let's just keep it across the board for a lot of the folks, and didn't really follow costs. But this is kind of the same format or results that we saw back then. So if you were just to design rates now based on cost of service and follow this exactly, we would be recommending that rates be changed exactly. That's what's summarized on the right side of this document. Now, cost of service is more art than science, because we have to allocate costs and use our best judgment on some dollars that aren't directly related to a particular service. So I use an example of if we were allocating cost of postage, we could probably allocate that pretty exact to the customer classes because we know how much we have to send bills out to everyone. But if we were trying to allocate the cost of maintaining the public utilities general offices, right? You can't, for janitorial service, let's say, you really can't allocate that to a customer class exactly because it's supportive of utility operations. So we do our best. We develop these non-attributable expenses and allocate them on consistent processes that we've used in the past. But there's more to it than this, because you might say to yourself, that's true, this looks like cost of service, this might be the result, but we really don't want to provide anyone a double-digit increase. And we want to maintain other objectives in our rate design that we believe to be just important to us as cost of service. And that's actually what your organization has done. And I believe, let's move to page, I'm sorry, I'm going to find it here. It's a few pages in. Here we are. Move to page 25. I'll just wait till you. I see the pages getting done flipped here, so I know I'm on the same page. So when we completed our cost of service study, we met with the utility management, Mr. Bach and the rest of the folks within the organization, and identified what your goals of a rate design to be. And these are them. We wanted to avoid any drastic changes in volatility from cost of service to rate design. You know, if suddenly one class showed needed a 20% decline and another one needed a 40% increase, that would be a drastic change. We wanted to smooth out the impact. So we wanted to avoid drastic changes. You wanted to also facilitate better customer understanding on the bills. Right now you've got multi-tiered systems on the bill, different off-season rates. I believe that generally has caused some confusion. You have what's called a declining rate block, which people might ask, well, why do we have a declining rate block? We're trying to conserve power, but it promotes people to use more power if it declines. So the organization really met with us and said, Tom, we'd really like to avoid drastic changes. We'd like to facilitate better customer understanding on our bill, which means more simplicity in the bill design. We want to make this to be a little more easy to implement into the new system to bill customers. We want to ensure that we can be cognizant of some of our competitors, the cooperatives, other municipal public utilities, the investor-owned utilities. We want to make sure that we are really taking a close look at how we compare our rates to others. And we also want to pay good respect to our cost of service. If it does cost that much to serve someone, we need to generally reflect that in a rate design. And that's what's difficult when you make a comparison from utility to utility. You might have a particular rate class. Your power sales class might have a threshold that says anyone with a greater than a 200 kW load is power sales. Well, you might compare yourself to another community who has a power sales class and their threshold is anyone with over 500 kW. So, and they might have a different way in which they bill. So it's hard to make the comparison. So that's why at the end of the day, we'd like to really rely on our own cost of service and how we operate ourselves. So that is the goal that we incorporated into the rate design. And page 26 is the summary of that rate design. Now this looks like a very familiar graph. It was one we showed you earlier, but we added another column, which is revenue at proposed rates. And you will see a couple items on here that I want to just maybe make sure you pay special attention to. There's a bottom line on this called customer class charged off sales, where it's for $929,800. That is those are for costs associated with services being provided to the city and other parts of city government for street lighting and other costs of service. Now we would all agree that those services do have a cost of service, right? It does take dollars in power and maintenance to serve those costs. So the cost of service identifies those dollars. But at the end of the day, that $1 million needs to be recast and collected from the residents or other ratepayers within the utility to be able to pay for those, since the city receives those services, just like a payment in lieu of tax would be recast and collected. In addition, then you'll see what that really means is while the overall adjustment is 6.45%, the effective increase might be a little higher because we cannot collect it from that other $1 million that needs to be recast up into the rate design. So you'll see the proposed change here in rates really range from 4.5%, or actually we're projecting the power sales class, which is your large power class. Rates remain essentially unchanged, and all the other classes of customers range between 4% and really 10%. I know there's a mercury vapor, a small rate class for area lighting in there, which is a little over 10%, but it's between 4 and 10% is what is being proposed. So that is the revenue at proposed rates, but there's a rate structure that actually that gets at that, and I really want to show you what that means. So I'm going to refer you to another page here as we continue to move through this. There is a significant changes relative to your rate design. I want to just summarize. That's what all these following pages are. I want to summarize them in a few broad statements. Your existing rate structure has what's called a very small customer charge per month. It's a small dollar, a fixed fee, and then an energy rate which declines. The proposal that we have, if you actually understand how the rates work, the reason why you have energy rates today that decline a lot, they start very high and decline small, is because we are just trying to collect fixed costs up front from ratepayers relative to the fixed costs of your utility. but they aren't put in a customer charge. They're collected through the first block of an energy rate. And it's just a little misleading. So what we decided to do is we said, let's develop a monthly customer charge, just like you have today, but let it be indicative of more of what it really is your fixed costs of your utility and capacity in your system, and develop a simple and easy to understand flat rate. Not have these multiple tiers that are that we currently have today. A lot of folks will understand that better. So that's really what we did. So we made adjustments to your customer charges and energy rates. So let me just show you an example. If we want to turn to page 27, we're proposing as an example in your, let's look just at your residential rate. Currently today you pay $4.50 customer charge, and then a variable energy rate. I think it starts at 11 cents and declines from there. Well, what we're proposing is actually we change the $4.50 to a customer rate of $13.79. Now someone might say, wow, that's 6% increase that you're projecting overall. Well, we just almost tripled that rate. Well, there's two components of your bill, customer rate and energy rate, right? So let's look at your energy rate, which is page 29. Now you'll see in page 29, your energy rate started off at 11 cents, then went down to 8.68, and then went down from there. We're actually projecting and proposing a reduction in your energy rate for the most part down to 8.59 cents, a flat rate. So if you think about your utility bill today, it's going to be a lot more simple to read. It's going to be an energy charge, customer charge, and a rate. That's what the proposal would be, not multiple blocked. The one exemption we are proposing for a different tiered block is you are a summer peaker, I believe, and we are proposing that we still maintain a reduced winter heating rate. So, so folks who use a lot of electricity in the winter can still receive the benefit of using more power off peak, and it still generates more income for your utility at that point in time. It's the only change. Okay. Okay. I want to bring your attention to power sales. Power sales is your large customer class. This shows you a little more example here. If I'm on page 30, you'll see that your large power sales customers. Now, I want you to just think about this for example. It's a great illustration. You have let's say you have a large power customer that brings a lot of load. You most likely provide them with a 3-phase service, large substation. You have to provide a lot of capacity for them relative to a residential customer. Significant infrastructure is made to serve a large power class. That infrastructure is put in place to serve a customer, and they may not use 1 kilowatt hour, but you have to have the capacity there ready to serve them, which results in high fixed costs regardless of usage. So you used to actually have a very small customer charge, but right away you charge them 14.5 cents energy to recover the fixed costs right away. What we did is we just increased your customer charge from $4, and then we reduced your energy rates from 14 and 10 cents and 2 cents all the way down to 6.57 cents a kilowatt hour. Okay, because that's really more indicative of your power costs and your fixed costs to serve customers. Okay, again, making it more simple, but shifting more costs to customer charges up front. Okay. Let's turn to page 32. We spent a little time talking about I believe you folks call it a PPA, purchase power adjustment. This system in this rate design essentially rolls that power purchase adjustments and starts with a new base rate. Back in 2006, I think your average cost of power was $38 a megawatt hour, and today, 6 years later, it's $58. Now, it's not really a product of you; it's a product of the electric market. You know, you're paying tariffed rates in a market, and you pay your share of those dollars. So you've had a significant increase in those power costs, and I want to maybe reiterate: when you purchase power and you serve your customers power like that, you don't make money on that. You purchase it and pass it through. So if they go up, they go up. It's not any I guess arbitrage, if you will, for the community to collect that. So the importance of a PPA is that your power costs change every year. When you purchase power from your different suppliers and the market costs change, things like this. Well, a PPA is an important aspect of this because it allows you to ratchet or change your power cost recovery on an annual basis without having to do any rate studies and not have to spend money on folks like me. The PPA allows you to get rid of regulatory lag, is what we say, to make your utility whole and not expose yourself to increasing power costs without a way to recover it quickly from your ratepayers that you just passed through. So it has been reset. I know that the utility asked us to weigh in on, give you our opinion on the PPA. We believe PPA are in most cases extremely essential to ensuring good liquidity at a utility. The offset of that is that sometimes it creates confusion by customers because they say this PPA thing on their bill and what is this? I don't understand what this is. I don't get it. Well, I would say that your challenge as a community should be more to inform what it actually is and keep it than to not deal with folks not understanding it and getting rid of it. But rating agencies and bonding companies see PPAs as very important to utilities because it allows for utilities, bondholders who invest in your communities to realize that you're able to maintain your minimum earnings ratios for debt service coverage by having that. So, you might ask how many utilities have PPAs and how many don't. I know some states actually require purchase power adjustments. Some states do not. But my belief is that I'd have to say half do, half don't. It's anecdotal. I guess I've never done a study. But I would tell you that if I was a council member, which I've never been, or a utility commissioner, this is something I feel that I really would want to believe that we need to have this. And if our community don't understand and doesn't understand what it is and how it works, I think, and I told the advisory board tonight, I said I think you folks should spend some time recording some YouTube videos to your community explaining exactly what it is and how it works and why it's important. And that just might help out quite a bit. So that's what my thoughts are relative to the PPA. All the rest of these slides actually talk about the rate impacts to the different rate classes, but let's just turn to page 38 in the study. By the way, I think this is the first time record that my presentation packet was almost as many pages as the study, but that's only because we included all these different rate impacts in the back. Well, here is the long and short of it on page 38. Remember we talked fixed charges kind of go up and energy charges go down, and all of us, and I believe your residents would ask the same question, well, thank you very much, Tom, for explaining this, but what does it really mean? How does it impact us? Well, I believe residential winter customers will see a monthly increase in rates of around $11. Residential summer rates should see a increase around $18. And commercial customers on average would see about a $20 increase per month in rates on the average of a $646 bill. Now, I didn't include power sales on here because power sales, remember we're essentially hold at zero an amount. These changes, these subtle changes, all add up to an incremental increase in revenue of around $2 million a year, which is our rate adjustment. Okay, so that is really the summary, the summary of our rate study. And I want to just kind of explain one last thing in closing, and that is. Now, we did not do this analysis. We weren't asked to do it in our study, but I'm trying to preempt maybe some questions that are always asked of me when I present, and that is, well, what was the $2 million from? Why did our costs go up? What can we do to mitigate our costs? Why do we keep adjusting our costs when we should think about how to decrease spending? Things like this. So I want to just give you a little comparison, and remember, your utility has a net revenue requirement of around $34 million, right? That's the revenue you need to generate to cover your costs. Well, that $34 million is represented by a few big numbers. And you don't have to write this down. You can just ask the utility to provide you this, but I did this over dinner at the rib joint down the street here getting ready. But the first component of $34 million is $28 million is power cost. Okay? So that power cost is created predominantly by a customer turns their light bulb on or they draw a load. That results in a meter spinning, which results in the substation and the utility requiring power, which requires the utility to purchase power. 28 million of the 34 million is power costs. 2.5 million is to maintain your system. Tree trimming, labor, maintaining your system, operations, supervising the system, all the costs associated with maintaining your system. 1.8 million is administrative and general costs, which are pensions and benefits, insurance, paying salaries of the utility management that's at the utility building, paying for your customer service center, sending bills out, 1.8 million. That number equals $32.3 million. Then you spend $3.8 million a year on debt service and capital improvements. Okay? $1 million or so of that is debt service. The other portion is plant. I'm almost done. Then $900,000 is for unbilled services or the city services that we need to collect from rates. Okay, all of that equals right around $37 million, and then you generate $2.8 million of revenue to offset that, which gets you to $34 million. Okay. So, I'm only bringing this up because one of the advisory board members asked me during my presentation tonight, did you look at anything to help us reduce our costs? And the answer is no, that's not what our job was. Our job was to take your costs and develop rates based on those. But as I thought about that, when I left, I said, well, I walked out of there and I said, well, where could you really spend time looking at your costs? And I said, well, 28 million is variable. If you want to reduce power costs for your buying power, your ratepayers need to use less power. Okay, that would generate a lower bill. $2.5 million. The question might be, well, is $2.5 million reasonable to maintain our system per year? I haven't done a study to look at that. I haven't looked at that. My initial reaction, I wasn't too concerned by that number. It didn't seem that large. 1.8 million to run your entire utility. That's 5% of your total costs only to run your system. Didn't scare me that much. And when you're thinking about $2 million rate increase, okay, you could actually say we are not going to have any administrative and general. We're not going to pay any insurance, no pensions and benefits. Get rid of all of our management. Don't send bills out, and you would still need a rate adjustment after that. Okay, so it's just that's not a lot of stuff to squeeze out of. And the 3.8 million is plant and net service. $1 million is uncontrollable. 2.8 million is plant. So I think it's okay and fair for you as a utility to ask, well, should we spend $2.5 million in facilities or not per year? Well, you have depreciation, by the way, of 2.1. That's usually a good indicator of facilities being declining in value over time, and that's old dollars. New dollars are always more. So the 2.8 didn't scare me either. And you have unbilled services and a revenue offset. So, and I didn't look at the dollars back in 06, but I really think one of the biggest changes that have occurred since 07 through now is that you used to sell a lot more power into the marketplace and generate income from surplus capacity that you have in your system. Well, power costs have declined since 07. The market for you to be able to sell power into, it's just the attractiveness has not been there like it has been in 07, 08, and 09. And I think that's really a significant part of why we need to have a rate adjustment right now as well. So those are the big dollar items. These are the costs of what we used in the rate study. I tell you, I don't know where you would look if you ask me on here, but those are the components of that. I believe that the rate adjustment that's being proposed is representative and representative of I guess, a comprehensively done study. I don't think it's out of line. You pay us to advise you. At the end of the day, you make all the final decisions, but you pay us for candid advice with insight, and that's what I wanted to provide you tonight. We believe it to be the number that we would be proposing to you with all the facts that we've been presented with to do our work. So that's my presentation.
Tom, I guess, and you just got through saying it, those numbers, none of that expense side stuff really scared you that much, but you do, like I say, you have 100+ clients throughout the country, and how do we compare with similar size utilities? You just said that those numbers.
I'd love to do a big study for you and figure that out.
Yeah.
But
give us a cheap version.
When we looked at this, usually you look for the flag. Oh my gosh, what is this? How could that be? There's something, and there's nothing glaring at me that would indicate that you were out of line relative to any of your peers. No, you could be. But I don't think so. You're not heavily indebted, so your debt load isn't much. You were spending slightly higher in capital additions than depreciation, which should be, because depreciation is expensing old assets, and you're replacing them with new. So new assets cost more. So I don't believe your capital spending from rates is out of order. Your A&G is I think is low. Nothing appears to be out of line. And when I compare just your rates, when we did your rate design, we always laugh back home. I live in Wisconsin. Maybe you could tell from my accent a little bit, but we laugh at the rates because we said, geez, we should move down the Poplar Bluff. Those are, people are, it's all relative though. When you start at a lower position of rate and you get up to a higher position, people always should be concerned, and there should be a significant amount of due diligence placed on whether that's accurate and okay and appropriate. So I understand that, but I live in a world where my rates are a lot higher, and I'm like, wow, that still looks good. I'll take that, but of course, that's just my viewpoint living back home. But I think you're without doing any work and just comparison that I think with our exposure to other utilities that we work with, things would jump out at us. Nothing jumps out as being out of line.
And our purchase power adjustment, which there's been a lot of conversation over of late, and I know you all didn't take a look at that. It is what it is, cost divided by kilowatt hour minus your base cost. And you used a number a minute ago that now we're looking at $58.50 per megawatt hour, which is exactly what ours figured out to. So we're good. Contrary to some public opinion, our purchase power adjustment, if it was a half cent higher, we wouldn't be, but it can't be. It is what it is. But we've been told by certain individuals that it is should actually be a lower number, where you don't lose $3 million last year and $2 million this year if you've got a purchase power adjustment that's too high. Never mind. I know you didn't do that study either.
Well, if you compare cost, say with Ozark Water, our cost per kilowatt hour versus theirs, ours is lower, correct?
That's correct, even with the new rate that they're looking at.
It's so difficult. You folks really want to make comparisons to communities, and you should do it. But that's only fair when the communities are the same.
That's right.
As far as densities, age of infrastructure, you might have your utility might have a 3% better load factor than another community because of your industry. Well, it has a significant impact to decrease your cost of service. So it's very, you can look very macroeconomically at what just overall indicator of the rates. It's always dangerous to compare. I guess that's why you hire us, because I'm letting you know these are your costs and this is what the impact is. So I think you should be fortunate that I believe your rates are fairly attractive relative to some of your competitors and local or peers when we took a quick look at it.
Well, that's why we'll keep comparing. When we get up around 10 or 11 cents, we may stop.
Well, you look at the infrastructure that we've put in, the money we've had to spend, and hopefully we'll continue to have to spend as we have more businesses come in and things. And as he pointed out, when you put it in 20 years ago, it was a whole lot cheaper when you use utility manager than it is today, isn't it? probably
Yep.
almost double. Well, the price of copper is more than double. if you add.
Your investment in your community right now is nearing $70 million of capital spending. One of probably your largest, for sure, you're probably by far your largest investment in this community.
But at least our city is growing. I mean, what if we had these expenses and then people were moving away from here? Then you'd have to spread that cost among a smaller amount of people. So at least we're on the upside. There's more businesses, more new homes, more things today than there was in '06. And so when you spread it out, it's a smaller amount than if people were moving away and you still had that. There's just known factors you can't change. I mean, there's just so much things that are going to cost us no matter what. But the more people we have, the more growth we have. Yes, we have to spend the money for the infrastructure, but you have more people to spread that cost over to keep it down.
And a lot of the base load that we've anticipated is stuff that you have to look at the future, and you can't just simply, and that's a lot of the costs that we're talking about right now, but you can't simply have the kind of growth that we're going to anticipate without preparing for it. And I'm talking about long-range plans too, and long-range contracts. So.
Well, like when I first got on council, we were doing that 20-year study. You know, they had not done it in so many years, and we started forecasting out what was going to happen over the next 20 years. You know, that's what utility company has to do along with that, and a lot of it's already coming true. I mean, it's just amazing how, you know, you put that plan in place, and it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And again, somebody's going to have to look at that study and take it out the next 20 years and the next 20 years. It's something that's a moving target. It's never going to stay locked in because things are just going to keep changing.
Well, I guess I need to apologize for Tom because this was not his fault. He had a short version too. I asked Bill to make sure that he gave you the long version because I thought it was important that we got a good grasp on exactly what is going on with this.
I think it's very helpful because it is hard to explain the utility bill when you're at Walmart or at the beauty shop or someplace and people ask, well, what is this? Well, what is this? I'm like, because it's not our expertise. We have other things that we do. I mean, I know we can go back to Bill and he can explain it, you can explain it, but just off the fly, it's really hard to explain all those details. And so, and it looks like too that you're kind of fixing it so with your proposal to us that it would be something to be more manageable for folks to have it like an even bill rather than this drastic up and down, and which is better for their budget because they get paid an even amount most of the time. You know, they're set on a set income. Then you kind of have that. It's like how they'll average utilities sometimes, rather than having that. You know, the concept was good back whenever they could get it to be lower, but when it continued to go up, then I think it's better to lock it where it stays level, and they can budget better maybe.
Yeah, I could agree with you on that because, you know, people I talk to don't come and say, boy, I really appreciate it because my electric bill went down last month, or it stayed the same.
Mm-hmm.
Say, how come this big increase? And it's a purchase power agreement. Well, what's that? You know, so I think to stabilize something with folks is a big plus in our favor that folks can see that it's going to their utility bill is going to be such. And there won't be any rise and fall in it. And we can understand why, because of the purchase power agreement and that. But if it happens to you 3 or 4 times a year and it jumps way up, then folks get suspicious of that, of how come.
And there's so many more things to plug in today than there was 20 years ago. You know, you just didn't have the technology, the cell phones, the laptops, the computers, the microwaves, the curling irons. I mean, there's so many things that have changed that causes us to use more electricity than we did in the past. You know, you just are not comparing apples to apples. I mean, just so many more things have changed. Yeah, and you can't get them to use less, you know, but that's an individual thing. You know, people don't realize that when they leave something plugged in, maybe they do, but some people don't realize when they leave it plugged in, it's still drawing power. If they don't unplug everything from the wall, part of it's their fault. Part of it's because they're keeping it there for convenience. So that, and then folks take for granted when you go to flip that switch that we're going to have lights on. I mean, these last storms, you know, so many times, a lot of the cities couldn't keep their power on. And fortunately, we have a system that has kept us up and going.
And you look at cut cost. Where's our main cost? It's our purchase of power. Are we going to cut that? No, but Tom said if people cut down on the usage, why we'd cut down on the cost, but that's not gonna happen.
It's not going to happen. I mean, they're just known factors. You can stop trimming the trees and the ice storm comes, and it's going to cost you more to put back what got torn up rather than doing the maintenance and, doing due diligence as we go along. I mean, I don't know where else you could trim it. Start unplugging things, I guess.
And another thing that, if you look at employee and employee cost, they have to be at a certain level to attract the kind of people that we want, that keeps our system going. And if you don't attract those kind of people, then you've got an employee turnover. And I don't know what it is, but it'd be pretty high. You've got an employee that's been 3 or 4 years, and that employee leaves, and you've got to hire a new one, go through all that process, go through the process of retraining that employee, which is a cost added on that you never think about when you get a new employee, but it's there every time. So I don't think that's exorbitant. If you look at our employee cost, the benefits that our employees have, I don't think that's out of line.
They're not extravagant. And then look what postage has gone up over the course of this 6 years, and look what gas has gone up, and you're having to put gas in all those utility trucks to go fix the lines or hook up new service. I mean, there's just some factors in there we have no control over.
Could we switch to maybe a more electronic system for, I don't know, delivering bills? Maybe that would cut down on some of the postage, but probably not.
That would be pennies probably compared to
But it would
what's here,
still,
but it could.
Little things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very healthy for communities to ask the question, are we optimally spending our dollars? So I think it's okay to ask, well, are we spending the right amount in the right way? I mean, it's a separate chapter of what this project is, right? And I feel confident if you look at that, we'd be having the same conversation. Well, we could do a little, but that's
Not gonna be an impact.
it's little here and little there, and maybe you can make up a lot of those. But I was even saying just a lot of folks like to shoot at like administrative costs and general costs, and you just say, well, let's say we really take something to it and knock all those costs down by 10%, which some of them are unavoidable. So it really means you're taking some of them and knocking them in half to get achievement of that. Even that is a point. It's 0.3% of the 6% adjustment. It's hard to really manufacture the dollars. But I think it's I think it's very healthy to have these conversations, and I think this is the beauty of why I love public power, because residents can have the voice for you guys to ask the tough questions and get down to it. And I think I've been involved in a lot of these conversations over the years, and they always tend to end up in almost every case of, we're doing a pretty darn good job. And I'm glad we looked at that, because now we feel confident not only for ourselves but for our community that, hey, we need to look at these things we did and we feel good about it. So I think these conversations are good. I know it probably wasn't my place to say that, but I
Thank you.
felt compelled to. So, all right, are you all done with me?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
And I don't know whether we'll get Tom back or not, but I know you all just got these put in front of you. We have this on the voting session for our next meeting. And Tom, you or Andrew coming?
Andrew is coming.
Okay, but we have asked them to come back again just in case after you have a chance to review these more thoroughly. If you have additional questions, and we will have the experts here in southeast Missouri. That's somebody that's more than 40 miles outside the city.
You have my email address too. I welcome
It's in
any
the very back of
questions
the
you might
book.
have.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
very much.
That I'd entertain a motion and a second to move this item to the voting session to be held June 17th.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have another item for workshop, item C. This grant that we approved by resolution to apply for communications came in, and it came in unexpectedly, and it's got to be everything done before the 17th. So we're adding that item. It wasn't on the printed agenda, but we're going to add it on tonight under emergency situation that it has to be in order to receive a $36,000, I believe it was, grant for radio equipment. City Council review a grant award contract from the Missouri Department of Public Safety, Missouri Interoperability Center for the Police Department for radio equipment. We already had the discussion on this back when we did the resolution, so with that, I'd entertain a motion second that move to the voting session to be held tonight.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to action required items. Bill number 7600, the City Council will take action on an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement for the Industrial Park Drainage Project grant proceeds.
Move for first reading of Bill number 7600.
Second.
Motion second for first reading, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Duncan?
Bill number 7600, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Poplar Bluff, Missouri to execute an agreement between the city of Poplar Bluff and the U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration with regard to a financial assistance award for the Industrial Park Drainage Project.
Move for second reading, Bill number 7600.
Second.
Motion second for second reading, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Duncan?
Bill number 7600, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Poplar Bluff, Missouri to execute an agreement between the city of Poplar Bluff and the U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration with regard to a financial assistance award for the Industrial Park Drainage Project.
Move for adoption, Bill number 7600.
Second.
Motion second for adoption, any comments? Roll call, Mr.
You know, one of the things that we might want to do is I'd suggest that we at least meet with the commissioners, or Doug meet with them and say, hey, here's the grant that we got, here's what we're going to do. I don't know, it's not going to change the amount of water that flows. I don't know, it may change the speed, I don't know any of that, I'm not an engineer. We have, I see one engineer back here, folks like that could tell us, then they would know that here's what we've done, and the water is all going to go into the county. I think we could at least inform them that we were going to do that we have this grant, we plan to do the work, here's what we plan to do, and see, at least they will know. It won't be something, and they know it anyway, but at least it did come from us first.
I'll be glad to make sure the commissioners know we actually I meet with them on Wednesday. I can't remember what for right now, but I meet with them on Wednesday. So I'll add that to the agenda.
Okay. They might appreciate that if we let them know.
Thank you, Councilman Matthews. Roll call, Ms. Kirby?
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Councilman Matthews.
Yes.
Councilwoman Pearson,
Yes.
Councilwoman Abshir,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McVeigh.
Yes.
Mayor DeGaris.
Yes.
We have 6 yes votes.
Thank you. Bill 7600 is passed. Resolution number 1774, the City Council will take action on a resolution making appointments to the Airport Advisory Board, Downtown Poplar Bluff Board, Municipal Utilities Advisory Board, and Zoning Board of Adjustments.
Move for the reading of resolution number 1774.
Second.
Motion second for the reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Duncan?
Resolution number 1774, a resolution making appointments to the Airport Advisory Board, Downtown Poplar Bluff Board, Municipal Utilities Advisory Board, and Zoning Board of Adjustment.
Move for adoption, resolution number 1774.
Second.
Motion second for adoption. Roll call, Ms. Kirby?
Councilman Matthews,
Yes.
Councilwoman Pearson,
Yes.
Councilwoman Abshir,
Yes.
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McVeigh.
Yes.
Mayor DeGaris.
Yes.
We have 6 yes votes.
Thank you. Resolution number 1774 is adopted. Resolution number 1775, the City Council will take action on a resolution making appointments to the Animal Control Advisory Board, Arts and Museum Advisory Board, Fair Housing Committee, Historical Preservation Commission, Housing Authority Board, Library Board of Trustees, Park Board, Planning and Zoning Commission, Disabilities Advisory Board, and the Black River Coliseum Advisory Board of the City of Poplar Bluff, Missouri.
Move for reading resolution 1775. Second.
Motion second for the reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Duncan?
Resolution number 1775, a resolution making appointments to the Animal Control Advisory Board, Arts and Museum Advisory Board, Fair Housing Committee, Historical Preservation Commission, Housing Authority Board, Library Board of Trustees, Park Board, Planning and Zoning Commission, Disabilities Advisory Board, and the Black River Coliseum Advisory Board of the City of Poplar Bluff, Missouri.
Move for adoption.
Adoption of Resolution 1775.
Second.
Motion second. Any comments? Roll call, Ms. Kirby?
Councilwoman Pearson,
Yes.
Councilwoman Abshir,
Yes.
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Councilman Matthews.
Yes.
And Mayor DeGaris.
Yes.
We have 5 yes votes.
Thank you. Resolution 1775 is adopted. Resolution number 1776, the City Council take action on a resolution making appointments to the Plumbing Board, the Electrical Wiring Board, Building Standards Board, and the Heating and Air Conditioning Board of the City of Poplar Bluff, Missouri.
Move for the reading of Resolution 1776.
Second.
Motion second for the reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Duncan?
Resolution number 1776, a resolution making appointments to the Plumbing Board, Electrical Wiring Board, Building Standards Board, and the Heating and Air Conditioning HVACR Board of the City of Poplar Bluff, Missouri.
Move for adoption of Resolution 1776.
Second.
Motion second for adoption. Any comments? Roll call, Ms. Kirby?
Councilwoman Abshir,
Yes.
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Councilman Matthews,
Yes.
Councilwoman Pearson,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McVeigh.
Yes.
And Mayor DeGaris.
Yes.
We have 6 yes votes.
Thank you. Resolution 1776 passes.
Mr. Mayor, you know, as we looked over, at least as I looked over all the people that applied for these boards, I think folks need to be commended in this community for their willingness to serve on the various boards. And those folks, I know for a fact, put in a lot of time on those, and their attendance is good. They're here and they have an interest in the city. So I just, you know, we owe them a great deal of gratitude, debt of gratitude to assist us in the work that we do, and all of our city employees, you know. So just they're due a big thank you for even those that didn't get appointed. We appreciate them applying, and there will be openings next year. So
Yes, there will be.
Yes, they do a lot of work for us. Next item will be Bill number 7601. City Council will take action on an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a grant award to the City of Poplar Bluff Police Department for radio equipment.
Move for first reading Bill number 7601.
Second.
Motion second, first reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Duncan?
Bill number 7601, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the City of Poplar Bluff, Missouri to enter into a contract with the Missouri Department of Public Safety for the award of a grant to the city for mobile upgrades for use by the Poplar Bluff Police Department as a part of the Missouri statewide interoperable network.
Move for second reading of bill number 7601.
Second.
Motion second for second reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Duncan?
Bill number 7601, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the City of Poplar Bluff, Missouri to enter into a contract with the Missouri Department of Public Safety for the award of a grant to the city for mobile upgrades for use by the Poplar Bluff Police Department as a part of the Missouri statewide interoperable network.
Move for adoption of Bill number 7601.
second.
Motion second for adoption. Any comments? Roll call, Ms. Kirby?
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Councilman Matthews.
Yes.
Councilwoman Pearson,
Yes.
Councilwoman Abshir.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McVeigh.
Yes.
And Mayor DeGaris.
Yes.
We have 6 yes votes.
Thank you. Bill number 7601 passes. Next item, EE, the City Council of the City of Poplar Bluff will meet in a closed meeting in which they will discuss such matters which are exempt under the Open Meetings Law, Section 610.021.1, .2, .3, .9, .11, .12, .13, and .14 the revised statutes of Missouri.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion we move into closed session as stated after the city manager's report.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Bagley?
We had some minor flooding over the weekend. Just want to commend the police department and street department. I know Jeremy was out and very active. We had probably in the south end 4 streets down for 2 to 3 hours. F Street on the east side was blocked for a very short period of time. Ashcroft, which is on the river side of the levee, was the only street that we had blocked off, I think, overnight. Jeremy, is that right? Yes. But, I mean, these guys are out on it. I was out of town this weekend. Jeremy called me, and he, you know, they pay a lot of attention to those kind of things when those river levels get up. Really, everything we saw was minor. Water didn't get in any houses, and the police department had any calls on any type of evacuation. So river level at 17 foot starts us to worry a little and start wondering about things. If it continues to rain, the east side is inside a ring levee, and it acts as a swimming pool when that happens. But the hard rains like that, they generally get out pretty good. And so just want to commend the street department and street superintendent and the police department for looking out for those things and always being available and keeping an eye on it. So good job. That's all I have.
Okay, we've got in our packet, we have, I'll just read it, Everyday Hero Award presented to Pam Kirby on this 12th day of March 2013 in dedication and service to the MOCCFOA, Missouri City Clerks Finance Officers Association Southeast Division, for always being ready to lend a hand and to get the work done and striving to make your division the best it can be. 2012-2013 by Tula Skillman, President of the MOCCFOA.
And
Congratulations.
I can tell you, Pam showed that to me, and I had to actually make her put it in the council packet. She didn't plan on doing that. So, a very prestigious award.
Pam, you've been working on that, your certification, for what, about 4 years or 5 now?
5 years.
And you're real close to being.
Real close. I'll have it this next year when I go.
But this is amongst our peers of other city clerks, so that is quite an honor. Not,
That is an honor to
Not
get
just from here, but
peers.
from her peers, yes.
And then I was asked to pass on the thing, went to the library board meeting this afternoon, and they wanted to thank the city council and the city of Poplar Bluff for financing them for all these years. Now that they've got their own tax, they said they wouldn't even be anywhere near where they're at without the help of the city and the citizens. They want to make sure everybody received a great big thank you.
Might want to remind folks to vote tomorrow.
Mhm.
Exactly right.
It's
Yeah,
one
we
of the
had a
special elections.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to bring up Councilman Branham. If we could keep him in our prayers. He's been recovering from a heart procedure, so that's why he's not here tonight.
I actually mentioned that in the
Public hearing.
Okay.
portion.
If there's nothing else, I'd entertain a motion to, and a second to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Motion second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourn. Come back in about 5 minutes.